So I'd like to welcome you all to the meeting for July 5th. Members of the public, second. Checking. It's good. Okay. I apologize for that obnoxious noise. So members of the public are invited to participate in this meeting of council by accessing the meeting, which will be live streamed on our Middlesex Centre YouTube channel, or by contacting the municipal clerk to receive the registration link to join the meeting being held electronically. Members of the public are also invited to attend the meeting in person at Coldstream Community Centre, located at 10227 Ilderton Road in Coldstream. The municipality of Middlesex Centre recognizes that we are gathering on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Lenni-Lenape peoples. We acknowledge the enduring presence of the First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people on this land and are committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect. Our neighboring First Nations community, which continue to live as sovereign nations, include the Chippewa of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames, and Munsee Delaware Nation. The clerk tells me there are no additions to the July 5th, 2023 meeting agenda, so I'll look for disclosures of pecuniary interest. Are there any to declare? Okay, seeing none, then we can move to our delegations, presentations, and petitions. And I'm delighted to greet, pardon me, I flipped that word in my mouth. Inspector Ross Stewart from the Detachment of Middlesex Centre Field Operations. He's the district commander there, and he's going to provide us with an overview of operations and what they're doing these days. So welcome, Inspector Stewart, and the floor is yours when you're ready.
Can you hear me now? Excellent, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to take a few minutes this morning to have some discussion about police operations over the course of the last year or so throughout Middlesex Centre. But I also want to take the opportunity as the new detachment commander here in Middlesex to introduce myself to those who have not had the opportunity to meet me as of yet. I've been with the OPP for 24 years. I originally started in Peterborough as a patrol officer there. Then I went into forensic identification, investigating major crime out of our Belleville office, and then transferred to the London office. I had the opportunity after a number of years in those roles to get promoted to the Chatham area as a supervisor for criminal interdiction team. Which is essentially a group of officers that focuses upon intercepting firearms and drugs coming across international borders. I then moved on to Lambton Detachment in the Sarnia area, where I was a frontline supervisor for a few years, and then promoted to staff sergeant as the operations manager, overseeing operations throughout the Sarnia-Lambton area for a number of years. Most recently, I was the regional traffic manager at West Region headquarters in London, where I oversaw the traffic and marine program for West Region OPP. So that would include everything from all of our marine operations, ATVs, snowmobiles, as well as traffic enforcement out on the highways, long weekend initiatives, all those things. And then just recently was successful in getting the Middlesex Detachment Commander position. And I started on April 3rd. So just a few months in the role, but I can tell you that Middlesex is adopted home for me. I came to London for university and very quickly became my home and a place that I wanted to come back to and ultimately retire to. So I couldn't be more happy to have been successful in obtaining this role and to be here now. So that's a little bit about me. If I could, I'd like to share just a couple of what my priorities are, the things that are most important to me as the new detachment commander here. The first that I'd like to highlight is mental health related calls for service. I think probably most of you know that we have a mental health crisis team within Middlesex OPP. And essentially what that is it's in conjunction with Strathroy Caradoc Police, where we have 3 crisis nurses that are physically embedded in the cruisers with our officers. And they attend not only mental health related calls, but a wide variety of calls where they may be able to provide some suitable assistance to folks. Not only will they do mental health related assessments for people and make determinations as to whether or not they need more medical care, but just as importantly, they are able to immediately provide them with community resources, whether that's engaging a housing department or those sorts of things, in order to get these folks the meaningful help that they need. So it's a very beneficial program. One of my priorities is to expand that program if possible. It currently runs Monday to Friday, 8 until 4. In an ideal world, in the event I'm able to obtain grant funding, we'll expand it to 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, if we're able to. Having been the regional traffic manager, you can appreciate that I'm very passionate about traffic as well and road safety. And I know that that is something that's very important to Middlesex Centre as well as the rest of the community. Certainly that is a focus for me. My expectations for our officers in Middlesex are to be out doing high visibility patrols, whether that's in their cruisers, on bicycles, out on trail systems, on ATVs, and doing traffic enforcement, but also traffic education. What we know statistically is that there's 4 main factors that are responsible for the vast majority of fatal collisions that happen throughout the province and frankly across Canada. That's impaired related driving, it's excessive speed, it's not wearing seatbelts, and of course now the leading cause is distracted driving, cell phones, those types of things. So, you know, enforcement is one element of addressing those things, and it's an important element. But education is as well. And so that's something that we do on a regular basis and something that our media and our community service officers is very engaged in addressing, not only here in Middlesex, but also across the province. The other thing that I feel very strongly about is the accountability and transparency when it comes to the municipalities. I've had the opportunity over the last number of years to work very closely with all the municipalities in Lambton County. I found that to be very rewarding, but I also found it to be something that's extremely important, particularly with the way that the police service board is set up in Middlesex, where there's only one police service board, that being in Thames Centre as of right now. I do feel that it's very important for opportunities such as this today, that they happen with each of the municipalities so that you have the opportunity to find out what's been happening in your community from a policing standpoint, crime trends, and ask questions and those sorts of things. Now, I appreciate that with the new Police Services Act that will be coming in, we're going to see our police service boards expand. And as a result, there'll be additional representation from other municipalities other than Thames Centre. And I welcome this. I think that this is very important from an accountability standpoint, but also from a communication standpoint. But certainly what I would reiterate to everybody in the room today is that I would welcome conversations, emails, phone calls from any of you if you have concerns or if you want to discuss something. I feel very strongly that I need to be available to you when you ask, and that your concerns are addressed. So I can look at crime trends, I can look at statistics, and I can do interpretation with regards to what's going on in any given community. But those one-on-one conversations as to what's happening that I may not be aware of just from looking at statistics or reviewing calls for service, those are really critical conversations. So I would just encourage everybody to feel free to have those. If I could, I would like to do a short review of calls for service for 2022 within Middlesex Center. I have provided a report, and this is something that can be shared if you want to. It's very high level, but I would like to specifically talk about a few things within this report. And this is for the calendar year of 2022. In relation to motor vehicle collisions, we did see within Middlesex Center, we did see an increase in both property damage related collisions as well as injury related collisions during the 2022 year. There was a 10% increase in collisions where vehicles were damaged and no one was hurt, but we did see a 26% increase in personal injury. From a fatality standpoint, between 2021 and 2022, there were 2 fatal collisions in both of those years, so the statistics are static over the course of the calendar year for 2022. In looking at violent crime, the statistics that, I don't know if you can read that on the screen or not, but there are quite a notable increase when it comes to violent crime throughout Middlesex Center during 2022, a 25% increase. A lot of this is accounted for within what we've seen is a notable increase in the number of what we classify as robberies. Now, I appreciate that when I say robbery, maybe someone's mind goes to like a bank robbery, and certainly that would fit. But by definition, a robbery is a theft that involves violence of some kind at some degree. So it could be somebody threatening violence with a firearm in a bank, or it could be someone who pushes an individual and rides away on a bicycle. So there's a wide variety that fall within the robbery categories. Having said that, all of them are very concerning, any incident involving a robbery. Just to highlight a couple of these that I think are noteworthy. There was a situation where we had 2 robbery suspects that were wanted in the city of London that came into Middlesex Center. They entered a residence on Bigham Road and assaulted the homeowner and stole their vehicle. We were able to subsequently make an arrest for both of those people very quickly in relation to that event. We had an incident where some liquor was stolen from an LCBO, and when the clerk tried to stop the person from leaving, they were bit on the arm. We did make an arrest in that situation as well. We had a situation on Bells Road where 2 males entered the residence and assaulted the homeowner. And when the homeowner fled the home, a shotgun was fired at the person as they were running away. Thankfully, there was no injuries in relation to this. And we were able to make 2 arrests again very quickly in relation to that incident, and the firearm was also recovered. So that is extremely concerning when I hear events such as that. As you can appreciate, those become very dynamic situations that can be very tragic very quickly. The other one that I would note is we had an individual that came into an illegal cannabis dispensary with a firearm, pointed it at the clerk, and then got the product that they wanted and then fled the scene. Unfortunately, that was reported to us 12 hours after the fact. There was no video surveillance, and the individual was unable to provide us with any kind of a description of the individual that we were looking for. That was on Carriage Road back in December. So from a robbery standpoint, I know that stands out on my report. That's why I wanted to touch base or touch on each of those a little bit. From a property crime standpoint, in 2022, Middlesex Center did see an increase in property crime. However, I would specifically note that break-in enters to residences were down by almost 20%, so that's good news. However, we did see a notable increase in thefts over $5,000 during this reporting period as well. When I reviewed those, many of those were motor vehicle thefts. Drug crime, very little drug crime during the 2022 calendar year. We did have 2 incidents where our officers dealt with people that were illegally in possession of illegal drugs. And we did investigate 1 trafficking incident as well. Total calls for service for Middlesex Center during the 2022 year were 10,430. Now, if you were to go back over the last few years, you'll notice that that is a significant increase in calls for service, and I'll explain to you as to why that is. Over the course of the last 18 months, the OPP has transitioned from paper ticketing to electronic format ticketing. So if someone gets pulled over for speeding, traditionally you'd be giving a hard copy ticket by the officer, and it would be submitted to the courts, and it would move through the system. Now what happens is it's done electronically in the vehicle. You're still given a paper copy that's printed off in the car. However, an occurrence is generated for that ticket. So in 2022, although we have seen an increase in calls for service, 2,338 of those 10,000 calls were for provincial offense notices being issued. So I think that's a good thing. When I see those types of enforcement numbers and compare it to other areas where I've worked, that tells me a lot of enforcement is going on. What I can tell you is on top of that, there's also all of those traffic stops where education is provided and a warning is provided as opposed to an actual ticket being issued. So a lot of enforcement action going on throughout Middlesex Center. From a proactive standpoint in relation to impaired driving, our officers conducted 237 ride stop checks within Middlesex Center throughout 2022. And we had 49 impaired driving related offenses, 47 of which were alcohol, 2 of which were drug related. We are seeing more drug related impaired driving incidents provincially. Certainly that has increased. But in Middlesex Center, only 2 of those 49 were related to drugs. And pending any questions, those were the highlights that I wanted to touch on for 2022. I'm happy to, oh, there was a couple other things I did want to talk about, so I apologize. I'd had the opportunity to meet with some of your staff last month and also to have some discussions in the last couple of weeks with regards to some ongoing vandalism that's been happening in some of the public areas, signage, doors, those sorts of things. So we have set up what we call a focus patrol, where it's very specific patrol efforts by our officers, both on foot as well as in the cruisers, 24/7. In an effort to focus on specific issues. We will do this if we have an intersection where we're having a lot of collisions, but certainly when it comes to vandalism and tagging with the graffiti that's been going on, it applies to this situation. And our officers have been very engaged in doing patrols for that. We have not been successful in making any arrests in relation to that as of yet. What I can also tell you is that you're probably all familiar with the symbol KCK that has very, very common on the signage. Our officers were interacting with some youth a couple of weeks ago and asked the questions as to what that means. And it's been identified as Kilworth Crip Killers is what that is supposed to mean. I have reviewed this with our hate crimes in our organized crime bureau, and there is no gangs associated to that name that organizationally we're aware of at this time. But that is what we believe the KCK is referring to. Yeah, that concludes the points that I wanted to talk about, Madam Mayor.
Thank you for that presentation. I'm going to look to council for questions to follow up on the presentation. I'll start with you, Councillor Shipley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To the inspector, Inspector, in your violent crimes, what percentage would you say are repeat offenders doing that?
I don't know if I could put a specific percentage on it, but what I will tell you is that we do deal with the same individuals repeatedly. Certainly when we see things like property crime, there are individuals that we will immediately look to see if is that person in custody, is that person been recently released? Because statistically, we do see that we deal with the same people again and again.
Anyone else? I'll start with Councillor Cates and I see Councillor Burns' hand.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I was just wondering if you had any, could share any, you gave sort of some results of some of the things you mentioned. Do you have anything on the vehicle thefts? You know, were some people arrested or any outcome to that?
Thank you for your question. In relation to vehicle thefts, we do make arrests on an ongoing basis in relation to those. I don't know percentage wise where we would be sitting specifically in relation to that, but I could certainly find out that information. But it is quite common for us to, when we recover a stolen vehicle, to make an arrest associated to that.
Okay. Just wondering if you can give some perspective to, when you read the paper every day, it seems like there's more and more guns out there. There's more shootings, what I perceive to be violent crime. So you've been in the business for 24 years. What's happening? Is our society just getting more violent? Do you ever talk about what's causing all this stuff?
That's a good question. I would absolutely agree that there's no doubt that we are seeing more weapons related crime provincially for sure. Even as an SIU liaison organizationally, I can tell you that we deal with a lot of weapons related incidents even recently. What's causing it, I don't know. In my experience, I have seen a significant change in the demeanor of folks since COVID. I don't want to come across like I'm blaming it or trying to peg it onto that, but that is just the reality of it. It seems like social attitudes towards violence have there seems to be less concern with some folks when it comes to committing violent crime since the time of COVID. And I'm not really sure if that's related to lockdowns or anything else, but there certainly seems to be a nexus to that. It's absolutely concerning. From an organization, I can tell you that that's being addressed at the highest levels. I think it's quite public that our commissioner has taken a very strong and needed approach to repeat violent offenders in looking for bail reform. Because unfortunately, as previously asked, we are dealing with folks repeatedly at times, and including for violent related offenses. So certainly it is being addressed at the highest levels organizationally within the government, and it is a concern.
One more question for you. Have you heard of a Faraday bag? Talking about car thefts. It isolates your fob. Everybody leaves their fob near their vehicle. Would that be helpful? Is that what you see? People are cloning or somehow hooking up with your fob, and that's how they're stealing the car. Can you comment on that?
I can. Yeah, so Faraday bags are a great way to isolate any electronic device. For those that aren't familiar with that it's literally a bag that's insulated. and it doesn't allow any sort of electronic signal to come in or come out. When we look at high-end vehicle theft, we have seen an increase in folks using technology to walk up to your front door in the middle of the night, use this device, and if your key fob, for example, is within range of the front door, they're able to very quickly clone it, which will then allow them access to your vehicle and start it and drive away. So certainly that is a trend that we have seen. And I'm speaking provincially. I have not heard of that happening locally. However, I think it would be naive to suggest that it isn't, because it's a very effective way for stealing high-end vehicles. Something like a Faraday bag is a great idea for keeping that from happening. The other option is simply to keep things like your cell phones and your key fobs away from your front doors. If you have, for example, a bowl at your front door where you put your keys and your wallet when you come in the door, a really good idea would be to move that bowl to into your kitchen or somewhere away from the door, where someone who may come to your door in the middle of the night, they won't be able to pick up the signal because it's too far away.
Councillor Arts.
I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
I don't see any other hands. I just have one additional question. I think councillors will agree that one of the most frequent complaints we get when it comes to OPP related issues is they're speeding down my street, or they're blowing the stop sign. I don't know how we quite fix that second problem, but you've probably heard about AES, which is automated speed, or ASC, automated speed enforcement, which is being tested in Innisfil right now. Is the OPP see benefit to this kind of mechanical intervention, or is this going to cause additional problems, or do you have any thoughts on that?
I welcome any technological advance that increases road safety. Certainly areas like the GTA where they use speed cameras, it shows that it actually results in a lowering of speed. So yeah, any of those types of devices that assist in getting people to slow down, it's going to make the road safer, and I welcome it. From an OPP in general standpoint, whether or not we're looking at it for our communities or organizationally, if it's supported, I don't know that. But certainly, as I mentioned from my chair, I welcome anything that makes a difference and makes the road safer.
Well, thank you for all the information today. The updates help us understand what's going on, and some of the things that we hear are really happening. We're not just hearing it from one person. I'll echo Councillor Art's comments. We appreciate the work that you do, and we look forward to the next time you come in and give us another update. So good luck in the new position, and we'll look forward to seeing you again.
Well, thank you very much. And again, I appreciate the opportunity. Something for you to take away and consider is what sort of reporting cycle you would like. If you wanted me to do it, bi-yearly, like every 6 months or something, I'd be open to that. If you'd like it every year, that's fine too. I'm at your disposal. And certainly nothing that needs to be committed to today, but something for maybe some conversation. I would welcome those opportunities, and thank you again.
Okay, I think staff will follow up and arrange visits as needed and as appropriate. So thank you again. All right. Okay, with that, we can move to item 6.1, which is the minutes of the June 2023 meeting. And the motion before us is that the minutes of Middlesex Centre Council meeting held on the 21st of June 2023 be adopted as printed. If someone could move that, please, and second that. Councillor Heffernan, Councillor Shipley, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Moving to the consent agenda, we have a couple of items here. They're listed here to be received in one motion. If there's anything here that anyone wants to comment to or speak or ask about, I'll look for hands. Okay, Councillor Bruce, go ahead.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Fluoridation is not something we do here in Middlesex Centre. It does occur naturally in the Burr drinking water system, as well as the Melrose system, seeing their groundwater. We do receive the flow from the London facilities that do add fluoridation, and we just follow and get their limits and concentrations within the water as it arrives within our system.
Oh, just to follow on, so I've heard in the past, we'd have to have some sort of vote, a plebiscite on that. In the community, I don't think they even comment on this. I presume they think we fluoridize, but we don't, so, okay.
Any other items under consent? Go ahead, Councillor Shipley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To Tiffany. Tiffany, our interest rate was really good there. 222,000,003. It was 415,221. Was that lower principal or just the interest rates weren't as well?
Through Mayor DeVete, where in the report, sorry, Wayne, are you referring?
Under the analysis part, Tiffany.
Sorry. Okay, so the interest rates in 2022 were significantly increased over the 2021 values. And we did have an additional cash balance, which also increased the interest rates earned or interest earned on the on our bank accounts, which is mostly within the reserve fund accounts. Sorry, I don't know if I'm answering your question though.
No, I just wondering if we had more principal in there or where the interest rates were.
Yeah, so it's a combination of both. So with the lack of the capital spending last year as well, so that just means that the money stays within the reserve funds. And on top of that, with the increasing interest rates in 2022, that significantly increased it as well.
Thank you.
Oh, Councillor Arts, go ahead.
Through your mayor to Scott. When we hand over this these properties on 7.1, the surplus land, there's trails in there. Are they going to stay? And there's also trails that's not supposed to be in there. So is just going to continue on as is, or that'll be up to the Conservation Authority?
Through the mayor, well, it would be the province, so the Kamuka Provincial Park, that would maintain the stewardship moving forward. The trails that are in there are all informal trails as of right now. There's no formal municipal trails that have been defined there. They've just trails that have naturalized over time. I do believe speaking with our counterparts at the province, that there is a long-term plan to increase the trail network through the park and eventually through these lands. I would imagine as funding's available, et cetera, so that the trails would remain, the natural trails would remain as they are right now, but they're not formalized at the moment.
I don't see any hands, so I'm going to ask that the consent items 7.1 through 7.4 listed on the July 5th, 2023 agenda be adopted as recommended. Could I have a mover, please? Seconder, Councillor Burrs and Councillor Cates, all in favor? And that carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to staff reports. The first item up is the comprehensive zoning bylaw review and update. And we have Matthew Rodriguez, who's senior planner, urban and community planning with WSP, who's going to be joining. Oh, he's already up there. He's going to provide a presentation regarding the zoning bylaw review. So I'll turn the floor over to you and take it away.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay? I don't know if my audio is coming through. 1 second. Can you hear me now?
If we could just have a few minutes, 2-minute recess, there seems to be a little difficulty there and we'll just get that fixed. Thank you.
Thank you. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Great, thank you.
Yeah, okay. We do have quorum. I do want to hold that up. So we're going to start into the staff report with respect to the zoning bylaw amendment. So I'll let you take it away, Matt. Thank you.
Fantastic, and hope the audio is good to go now. And I'll just give me one minute here to get my screen queued up. All right, so I should be sharing my screen now. And good morning, Council, and to anyone viewing this morning's meeting. My name is Matt Rodriguez. I'm a senior planner with WSP, and we've been working with the municipality over the past several months to bring forward and complete the zoning bylaw conformity update. And happy to be here today to present our revisions as we bring this forward for Council's consideration. A brief agenda for today. I'll just go over some background into the process for those that may be tuning in for the first time. And then I'll spend a little bit of time walking through the key changes to the zoning bylaw amendment since Council has seen this last, and wrap up with just some next steps and where things will go from here. So by way of a bit of background, Council will recall that in April 2023, a statutory public meeting was held. And since that and leading up to that meeting, the project team received comments on the draft zoning bylaw conformity update. And so today we want to walk through the key drivers for that process, the changes made, as well as the next steps in the process. By way of a little bit of background, zoning in Middlesex Center is regulated today by zoning bylaw 2005-005. And the intention of this update is to implement the Middlesex Center official plan as amended through official plan amendment 59 or OPA 59, as well as to take an opportunity to address housekeeping edits and other minor modifications to the zoning bylaw, in large part identified by staff through their day-to-day administration and implementation of the bylaw. Back in May of 2022, Council adopted Official Plan Amendment 59 to implement changes through the official plan review process. And so this process resulted in a number of policy and mapping changes to the municipality's official plan. Council will recall that this is currently with the county for approval. The municipality's zoning bylaw was first adopted in 2005, and under Section 24 of the Planning Act, zoning bylaws must conform to the official plan. And so this project is sort of the next step stemming from an official plan review to make adjustments and to actually implement and bring light to some of the policies of an official plan that are regulated through zoning. So while an official plan sets out the vision, land use designations, and policies for development, the zoning bylaw gets into much more detail and regulation to actually implement and realize the vision of the official plan. A zoning bylaw does a number of things in a municipality. It looks at things like building height, setbacks, driveways and parking, lot sizes, regulations for accessory structures and sheds, as well as permitted uses. And so together, the zoning bylaw divides the municipality into various zones, and each of those zones carries a series of requirements and regulations that come together to form the bylaw, as well as a series of what are called general provisions that apply municipality-wide or to a specific use or to a specific type of development. So that was a bit of a crash course in sort of why we're here, as well as the role of zoning and what we're looking at through this process. And now we're going to take an opportunity to briefly walk through some of the key changes to the zoning bylaw amendment since the statutory public meeting. So the first sort of topic that we heard about was related to dwelling types and the clarification that's needed, as well as to review where additional residential units, otherwise known as ARUs, are permitted. And so there was just a need to review and some comments received that we needed to just take a look at what we were proposing in the draft amendment. And so through that review, we've proposed to remove the draft definition of cluster townhouse dwelling. And this was really to avoid confusion with other definitions in the bylaw. We also clarified the wording to the general provisions for ARUs to allow them alongside a permitted dwelling unit. And so what I mean here is that the Province's Planning Act sets out the requirements for ARUs. And it wasn't our intention through the bylaw amendment to constrain where they might be permitted or not permitted, especially where there is a site-specific exception zone that applies. And so the wording that we've introduced into the general provision just provides that clarity that aligns better with the intentions of the Planning Act in terms of allowing an ARU with a single detached, semi-detached, or row house style dwelling unit. We received some comments both from the community and staff to review permissions for on-farm diversified uses. On-farm diversified uses are those secondary uses in agricultural areas that help support the farm economy, things such as agritourism, farm produce stands, little shops or cafes, for example. And the official plan sets out policies for on-farm diversified uses. We took an opportunity through this revised zoning bylaw amendment to update the definition for on-farm diversified uses to include a list of the types of contemplated of uses in lieu of containing them in the permitted uses section of the bylaw. And so this is mostly a stylistic change to sort of align with how the bylaw is structured, but it also provides a bit more clarity to the definition of an on-farm diversified use as well. We also heard through this process to take a look at adjusting lot and building requirements in the UR3 zone to better align with OPA 59 and reflect more dense forms of development. And by way of context, the UR3 zone is sort of the higher density residential zone in the urban areas. And so we had updated it to permit building typologies such as stacked townhomes and other sort of mid-rise and townhouse style developments that the municipality is seeing. Through this updated amendment, we took the opportunity to update amenity space requirements for those types of developments. We also took a second look at the density requirements in line with the Kamoka-Kilworth secondary plan. And so we proposed some revisions to those density requirements to, again, better align with those more dense forms of development as sort of set out and contemplated in the secondary plan. We also took an opportunity to establish maximum lot coverage requirements for different dwelling typologies. One other thing that I'll note as well before I move on is just that we also received comments both as part of the statutory public meeting process as well as leading up to this meeting regarding the implementation of Special Policy Area 29. And council may recall that this SPA 29 was added to the official plan to apply to lands that were added to the settlement area boundary. And we received sort of some comments from landowners who wish to see those lands pre-zoned for different types of development, be it residential or otherwise. Based on a review of the policies of SPA 29, it's my opinion that it would be premature at this time to pre-zone those lands for a couple of reasons. The first being that SPA 29, which was introduced through Official Plan Amendment 59, requires further study before those lands can be developed. It also requires an official plan amendment to lift the special policy area, the SPA, and so through that there would be a need for a process to study those lands in more detail and understand how they can be developed and phased, etc., and where all of the different blocks would go. And so through a zoning bylaw, it can be challenging to identify where any medium density or higher density blocks may go, or park blocks, for example. And so there would be that sort of iterative process through the development application concurrently with any sort of draft plan of subdivision process to develop those lands. And last but not least, the SPA also enables the municipality to undertake a secondary plan for those lands within SPA 29. And so given all of those factors, we felt it was premature at this time to pre-zone those lands and are proposing simply to retain any existing zoning on those lands at this time, recognizing that the SPA 29 is in effect for now. I believe this is my last slide of updates. A few other sort of general updates that we've made to the bylaw. We added a new provision for cannabis production facilities related to sensitive land uses, which is a newly defined term. So we really want to direct those uses away or have some compatibility between a cannabis production facility and sensitive land uses. We reviewed and confirmed all of the lot and building requirements. So we just took an opportunity to make sure that everything made sense and dotted our I's and crossed our T's through the lot and building requirements. We also reviewed the numbering and section references throughout the bylaw just to make sure that any changes were reflected. And we retained parking requirements for drive-throughs, and this is a minor thing that we had proposed to remove through the draft, but through further conversations have continued to retain. So I'll wrap up with just some next steps in the process and where we'll be going or where the process will be going from here. So again, the draft amendment was released in March of this year, shortly thereafter followed by a public open house on April 5th and statutory public meeting on April 19th. We took the opportunities from there to receive comments from the landowners, from the public, from council, and finalize the zoning bylaw amendment, which was released in the back half of June. We're now here at council adoption at the beginning of July, which is fantastic, a fantastic milestone in the process that really wraps up the actual bylaw update itself. And then we're in a bit of a pause until such time as OPA 59 is approved by the County of Middlesex. The timing of that is TBD at this point. And at such time that the OPA 59 is approved and subject to any sort of modifications or otherwise, the zoning bylaw conformity update would come into effect afterwards. And so there is sort of this next stage following council's adoption to actually get this into effect. So that wraps up my presentation. I'm certainly here to answer any questions that council may have, as well as staff, and really again appreciate the opportunity to work with you through this assignment.
And we appreciate the overview. That was well done. I'll look to council then to ask questions of clarification. Is there anything anyone wants to add? Councillor Arts, go ahead.
Through your Madam Mayor, Matthew, sorry. SBA 29, which area is that? I'm sorry, don't have my maps in front of me.
And I'm also just queuing up. I had the maps open earlier, and I'm just queuing them up. So the areas that we received comments on were specifically in Ilderton, but there's also portions of SPA 29 in Delaware. And I know staff have any, if I've missed any others, but I believe it's Ilderton and Delaware where SPA 29 has been applied.
Through Madam Mayor to Matthew, yeah, you don't have to bring the map up. I just, now that I know the area, it rings a bell. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? I see shaking heads. So I will thank you for your time and effort, Matthew. We appreciate it. And I guess we'll look forward to getting the documents in the hopper and processed as soon as it is possible. So thank you again.
Thank you again, everyone.
Okay, so that brings us to a motion, and that before us is that report CAO number 19, 2023 regarding zoning bylaw review and update be received, and that the zoning bylaw amendments that BA 04, 2023 that updates the comprehensive zoning bylaw municipally wide to reflect changes within the official plan amendment number 59 be approved and come into effect upon approval of official plan amendment number 59. Is there a mover, please, and a second? Councillor Burrs and Councillor Arts, thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. We'll look to our Chief Administrator Office. Pardon me, I'm swallowing. I'm choking here. Chief Administrator Officer to talk about the Housing Accelerator Fund.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through the chair to members of council, on your agenda is a staff report with respect to an initiative that it's been approved by the federal budget, federal government through the federal budget in 2022 that allocated a substantial amount of funding with respect to the housing initiative and all the housing talk that's been happening at both levels of government. And so this Housing Accelerator Fund is being administered through CMHC. And the fund is a one-time application window, and that window, I believe, opened today. So it's a 45-day window offering to enable municipalities to apply for funding that will help expedite the development planning processes. And so the report before you is to request to move ahead to proceed with an application. Essentially, it's divided into two different streams based on population threshold. So if you're a municipality that's under 10,000, you have to identify 5 initiatives, and a municipality that's over 10,000, which is Middlesex Center, has to identify up to 10 initiatives that will that are attributed to planning and development processes. And so we've already, through the official plan process that we completed with WSP, we have already done a good amount of work with respect to our population studies, which we can then use and draw from, which will put us in good standing. And then we'll also work with the county and use their leverage to also help identify some of the other initiatives that will be put into the application process. And so the report before you is to request recommendation to proceed. It also identifies some potential uses of what if we were to be successful in receiving this money, any monies. Well, we've put on page 3 of the report some identified infrastructure initiatives that we would think about putting these monies towards to help us with our capital spending and infrastructure spending that we have on the foreseeable future. So at this point in time, it's just a recommendation request to proceed with the application. And then a further report will come forward once the application's been submitted to keep council apprised of the status update should we be successful on this initiative. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that. I'll look to council then. Are there questions on this report? I see shaking heads. It's quite a list of projects we've got, so fingers crossed. I think it's good to get into the hopper as soon as possible. So thank you for that report. We have a motion before us, that's staff report, CAO 18-2023 regarding the Housing Accelerator Fund, HAF, be received, and that council directs staff to complete an application for the Housing Accelerator Fund, inclusive of all supporting documentation to the Housing Accelerator Fund. And further that the CAO report back once more details have been provided in finalizing formal application to the Housing Accelerator Fund. Is there a mover, please, and a second? Councillor Cates and Councillor Shipley, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Okay, Old River Road. I'll look to our Director of Public Works and Engineering, Rob Cascaden, to provide the report. The floor is yours.
Good morning, members of council. So I'm happy to provide you with this status update on the progress of the Old River Road design. We've been working on this for some time and have collected information. The consultant has progressed to we call it a 30% design point through the process where we have developed preliminary design alignments and profiles and looking at constraints on the project. As well as some field investigations. So I'll go through this reports quickly, give you a couple of the kind of highlights from it, and then touch on a couple other items as we go. So back in March of this year, we did hold a public information center at the Kamoka Wellness Center. It was well attended by residents on the road, which was good to see. Comments in general were positive. One of the main themes that came out of that, both from the verbal comments and written comments that were provided, was the concern of the access gate that was being proposed at the north end and how that would function. So there's no final decision on how that gate would function, but the intent is to more or less follow the EA identified process with a bulb at the north end with a gate to be used for emergency access for residents. So we will hold another follow-up meeting at the 90% stage. That's likely to be late this fall or potentially early in the new year, depending on how the timing goes. And as you'll see, there's a couple of potential hiccups through the design, or a couple of challenges. So as I mentioned, we are at the 30% designs. That includes a review of the tree impact along the right-of-way. And certainly, you're all familiar with the road. There are some significant large trees along that right-of-way, and it's a narrow road, narrow right-of-way. We knew that there would be tree impacts. We're working to try to minimize that on the design. So initially, we had an initial plan, showed what the impacts were. We're reviewing with the consultants to try to minimize those impacts. that may be reducing the width of the road, adjusting slopes, whatever we can do to minimize the impacts and the cost. We also finished a geotechnical report that was provided. We saw some dialogue ongoing with the consultant. They're looking at slope stability, both for the main area of the curve where the slope stability issue has been a problem, I guess, historically, and then as well as the slopes as you progress to the east and the road cuts through the area where there's almost like one-to-one slopes that are actually quite bare right now. And it's part of the area where the road needs to be adjusted a bit. And so there's some constraints there with how we deal with those slope stabilities as well. So one of the other significant items that has been identified, which was unexpected, is two potential species at risk in the area. So one is a pileated woodpecker. We've walked the area. We've had ecologists walk the area. There's definitely feeding holes located in some of the mature trees. There was no nesting cavities that were identified, which to date is a good sign. If a nesting cavity is identified, then there becomes a 3-year monitoring period. So that's a very significant impact if that tree is to be removed. So there is one tree that we were concerned about that was right kind of on the cusp of whether or not it would be in the construction area or not. We're trying to see if we can work around that tree. Fortunately, right now it's only been identified as a feeding hole, not a nesting cavity. So, so we'll be monitoring that and also looking to put a tree removal program in place, potentially in advance of the overall construction, so that we can remove some of the trees that we know will be required before there are any issues. And then one of the other surprises that has also come up is a potential badger den located within proximity to the construction zone. That was certainly unexpected. We have not confirmed yet that it is a badger 100%. So we are putting up, so transportation has 2 cameras that we can install, motion activated cameras. So we're trail cameras. So we're going to be installing those to monitor the den, try to identify what species it is. Once we know, then we're going to have discussions with the Ministry of the Environment to confirm what's going to be required as far as protection of habitat, and whether we have to make adjustments to our design because of it. So that's an unknown at this point. So one of the positive things that has come out of this, though, was discussions with the county, that the county has identified that they are going to cover the cost of both the construction and the property acquisition from the bridge at the creek all the way to Glendon Drive. So that's great. That's a cost savings for us, certainly. Although we still see that the cost estimate of the 30% design is still over our intended budget that was in the 5-year capital. So what's not identified here is the cost savings on the property, because probably the largest property impact is at Glendon Drive, and the county is going to take care of that. We do have some other significant property impacts, particularly in the area of the curve. We've had initial meetings with landowners. The intended property taking limits have been staked on their properties now, so they can visually see what the impacts are. And then we have follow-up meetings scheduled with a couple of the landowners that have the most significant impacts. So kind of next steps for us is that we're going to take a harder look at the property acquisitions that are potentially required, start putting some better pricing together on those, on what we expect to be offering residents. So we're not quite to the point of purchasing yet, but put some numbers together so we know what the cost impacts are likely to be. And then as well as we progress through the design, to refine the cost estimate from the 30% when we're at a 50 or 70%, look at the cost estimate again. Potentially, I know this is a big project, so we're going to look at kind of chunking it out and looking at maybe section A is from the creek to the curve, and then the area of most concern, which is the curve where the erosion is happening. And then the top end and the tableland, maybe section C, look at what the cost is of each, and then bring a report back to council, and to make a determination whether we move forward with the full project, or we move forward with only section B, which is maybe the most critical in the short term, and leave other sections to do in the future. One of the things that we've also found is that we were hoping to find a design that would give us some flood resiliency in the low area by raising the road even a foot or half a meter to get us out of the floodplain, not to get us out of the floodplain, but to get us out of the frequent flooding events. What we're finding is that even a small raise in the elevation down there is very difficult because of the impact it has on the grading around it. To raise the cross section a foot means that the slopes that are already steeper than they should be in some areas, we end up chasing slope, and it becomes a lot of work and a lot of cost for a little bit of gain. So we haven't finalized yet, but preliminary results is that we're probably not going to be touching the elevations or really benefiting on the flooding side with the reconstruction. So I think I'll leave it there. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. So.
Thank you for that report. I'll look to council then for questions on the project. I'll start with Councillor Burrs.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Rob. So I read the report. Other than the species at risk, do you see this going next year?
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Burrs, if the species at risk comes back and can be addressed, and we find out it's not a badger hat, it's something else, and currently there's no feeding holes for pileated, then yes, it's feasible. The intent is to have it ready for tender in the spring, but if the species at risk becomes an issue, then yes, there could be a long delay there.
So you said you're not going to try to change the grading, the elevation. Are you doing any drainage abatement there? Is that possible so that we don't get further erosion in the low parts?
Yeah, so through Madam Mayor, Councillor Burrs again. So we don't intend to have any major grade changes in the low area because of that, but there are currently some cross culverts and some ditching. So the intent would be to try to improve the drainage that's there already and try to formulate. Some of those are very overgrown or filled in. We may have to add some additional ones in the slope area around the curve. Certainly drainage improvements there to try to minimize the erosion, and probably we're looking at the addition of curb and storm sewers in that area and try to collect the water to a single point of outlet to the Thames.
One last question. I would encourage us to do this because as we go through time, the cost of things is increasing astronomically. So this has been a thorn in our side forever. So if we can get it done, let's get it done and out of there. I just think the cost is going to get astronomical as we go through time. Just a comment.
I'll take Councillor Cates and I see Councillor Arts hand after.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, to Rob. So just if you could refresh us and for anyone listening. So as I understand it, so this is 2023. Next 2024 is the roundabout, and then 2025 will be from the roundabout to the bridge, which would include this mouth as far as the county goes, from what I've heard recently. So if that's 2025, how does their work fit in with our work? Are we able to do our part? And then it'll join up with theirs. I know you mentioned in the report that we may have to close that opening and only use the far end.
Yep. So through Madam Mayor to Councillor Cates, that's a good question. So there definitely be some coordination. So depending on what the county's timing is, so ideally we'd get in and do the construction next year on Old River Road. And then they would do Glen End the following year, right? Depending if we have delay, maybe we'll have to go the year after them or phase it. We'll have to see. Certainly until they've realigned the entrance or the connection at Glendon Drive, we won't have the north end closed, right? That'll have to remain until that's been realigned. Yep.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Rob. I realize we're going to have to do some property acquisition, but by fixing the road, theoretically, we've enhanced the values of the properties. So the cost of acquisition should be minimal because they're going to gain in the long run. Just a thought. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? I don't see any hands. We do have a motion before us, and that is that the report PWE 33, 2023 regarding Old River Road update be received for information. Could I have a mover, please, and a seconder? Councillor Heffernan and Councillor Cates, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Alrighty, there are no notices of motion. There are a number of correspondence items, numbers 1 through 6. Is there anything here that anyone wants to highlight or ask about? I don't see any hands. We have a motion before us that Council for the Municipality of Middlesex Centre receives the correspondence items 10.1 through 10.6 listed on the July 5, 2023 agenda as information. Could I have a mover, please, and a seconder? Councillor Arts, Councillor Heffernan, all in favor? Thank you. That passes. And now we have to go into a closed session. We have a motion before us that Council for the Municipality of Middlesex Centre adjourn to closed session at 10:40 pursuant to section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended to discuss the following matters. Under section 239(2)(b), personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, that is pay equity review. And under 239(2)(d), labor relations or employment negotiations, again, pay equity review. Could I have a mover, please, and a seconder? Councillor Cates and Councillor Burrs, thank you. All in favor? That carries.